The words settled over the table like a gentle sunrise. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Outside the cafe window, Paris continued moving as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Tourists walked past carrying shopping bags. Cyclists rolled through narrow streets. The distant sounds of traffic drifted through the morning air. But inside that small room, something important was taking place. Alex Eala was listening to a woman who had spent decades carrying the expectations of an entire nation. And Regine Velasquez was looking at a young athlete who was learning how to do exactly the same thing. "You know what people get wrong about success?" Regine finally asked. Alex shook her head. "They think success feels like confidence all the time." She smiled softly. "It doesn't." The singer stirred her coffee before continuing. "When I was younger, I thought there would come a day when all the doubts disappeared. I thought there would be a magical moment where I would wake up and suddenly feel completely certain about everything." She laughed quietly. "That day never came." Alex looked surprised. "Even after everything you've accomplished?" "Especially after everything I've accomplished." The answer caught Alex off guard. Regine leaned forward. "Every new level brings new fears. Every dream you achieve creates another mountain to climb. That's life." He paused. "The difference is that successful people learn how to move forward while carrying those fears." Alex stared down at her cup. That sentence felt familiar. Because tennis had taught her the same lesson. No player walks onto center court at Wimbledon without fear. No player stands across from a top-ranked opponent without doubts. The courage comes from competing anyway. Regine seemed to read her thoughts. "You're stronger than you realize." Alex smiled weakly. "I don't feel strong right now." "No one does after disappointment." Regine squeezed her hand. "But strength isn't a feeling. It's a decision." The words landed deeply, because they sounded exactly like something Rafa Nadal might have said. And in many ways, they reflected the philosophy Alex had absorbed since arriving in Mallorca as a child. Keep working, keep showing up, keep fighting, no matter what. The conversation drifted naturally from tennis to family, from dreams to sacrifice, from victories to failures. And for the first time since losing at Roland Garros, Alex found herself laughing. Really laughing. Not the polite smile she had shown reporters. Not the brave face she had worn for fans. A genuine laugh. The kind that releases pressure from your chest. The kind that reminds you life exists beyond scoreboards. Hours passed. Neither woman noticed. Eventually Regine glanced at her watch and sighed. "I have a flight." Alex smiled sadly. "I know." The singer reached into her purse. "I almost forgot." She removed a small velvet pouch. "What is it?" "Open it." Carefully, Alex untied the ribbon. Inside was a small gold pendant. Simple, elegant, beautiful. Alex stared at it. "It's gorgeous." Regine nodded. "Turn it over." Alex flipped it. 3 words were engraved on the back. "Leben, always, forward." Tears immediately filled her eyes. "Tita Regine." The singer smiled. "There will be days when you don't believe in yourself. There will be days when rankings drop. There will be days when injuries happen. There will be days when people criticize you." She gently closed Alex's fingers around the pendant. "When those days come, read those words." Alex couldn't speak. The emotion was too overwhelming. She simply nodded and hugged her. Long, tight, meaningful. The kind of embrace that says everything words cannot. The story should have ended there. But fate had one more surprise waiting. Because while Alex and Regine were sharing breakfast in Paris, a completely different conversation was taking place thousands of miles away. In the United States, among basketball royalty, a gathering of legends, Hall of Famers, champions. And at the center of that gathering sat Larry Bird. 3-time NBA champion, 3-time MVP, Olympic gold medalist, one of the fiercest competitors in sports history. Larry Bird had built his reputation on words, on confidence, on fearlessness. on never backing down. Nobody had ever accused Larry Bird of being speechless. Then Michael Jordan stood up. The room immediately quieted. Whenever Jordan speaks, people listen. Not because he talks often, but because he rarely wastes words. Those present expected stories. Maybe jokes, perhaps memories from the dream team. Instead, Jordan looked directly at Larry Bird and began speaking from the heart. People talk about greatness all the time. The room grew silent. They talk about championships. They talk about statistics. They talk about records. Jordan paused. But when I think about greatness, I think about Larry. Bird shifted uncomfortably. Jordan continued. I wouldn't be Michael Jordan without Larry Bird. The room froze. Bird blinked. Jordan pressed forward. When I entered the league, Larry was the standard. He showed all of us what professionalism looked like. He showed all of us what preparation looked like. He showed all of us what competitive greatness looked like. The basketball world has debated Jordan versus Bird for decades. But this wasn't a debate. This was respect. Pure respect. Jordan looked directly at Bird. And the truth is, every generation needs someone who makes the next generation better. He smiled. You did that for me. The room remained silent. Many had never seen Bird emotional. Jordan wasn't finished. And that's why your legacy isn't measured by rings. It's measured by everyone you inspired. By now Bird's eyes were watering. The greatest trash talker in basketball history had nothing to say. Nothing. For once, words failed him. Because some compliments hit deeper than criticism. Some respect means more than trophies. And hearing it from Michael Jordan carried a weight few people could understand. Jordan walked over. The two legends embraced. The room erupted. Not because of rivalry. Not because of competition. But because greatness had recognized greatness. Back in Paris, Alex Eala would later hear about the story. And something about it stayed with her. Perhaps because it echoed her conversation with Regine. Perhaps because it echoed her own journey. The realization that success is never just about winning. It's about impact, about influence, about the people who come after you. At 21 years old, Alex still dreamed of Grand Slam titles. She still dreamed of lifting trophies. Still dreamed of hearing her name announced as a champion. But increasingly she understood something bigger. The little girls waving Philippine flags weren't inspired by her ranking. They were inspired by her courage. The overseas workers waking up at 3 in the morning weren't supporting her because she was perfect. They supported her because she kept going. Because she kept showing up. Because she represented possibility. And maybe that was what Regine Velasquez had seen all along. Not a tennis player. Not a ranking. Not a result. Symbol. Reminder. Proof that someone from Manila could stand on the biggest stages in the world and belong there. The French Open would continue. Champions would be crowned. Trophies would be lifted. History would be written. But years later, many people would remember something else. A singer standing on court, Suzanne Lenglen. A song echoing across Paris. A young athlete fighting back tears. A breakfast conversation that changed everything. And 3 simple words engraved on a gold pendant. Leben. Always. Forward. Because sometimes the most important victories never appear on a scoreboard. Sometimes they happen quietly. Between generations. Between mentors and dreamers. Between legends and those still becoming legends. And for Alex Eala, that victory may have been the one that mattered most. Alex knelt down, accepted the crayon drawing, and looked carefully at every detail. The tennis player in the picture was smiling. The Philippine flag behind her stretched across nearly half the page. And above her head, drawn in bright yellow crayon, was a crown. Not a champion's trophy. Not a Grand Slam title. Crown. Alex smiled through her tears. Thank you, she whispered. The little girl beamed. My mama says champions don't always win, she said. Sometimes they just keep trying. For a moment, Alex couldn't speak. Because that was exactly what she had needed to hear. Not from a coach. Not from a journalist. Not from a celebrity. From a child. A child who had somehow understood the lesson she herself had spent days trying to learn. The crowd around them grew quiet. Several people wiped away tears. Alex carefully folded the drawing and placed it inside her backpack. "I'm going to keep this forever," she promised. The little girl's eyes widened. "Really? Really?" The girl threw her arms around Alex's neck. And in that crowded airport terminal, surrounded by strangers and supporters from every corner of the world, something shifted inside the young tennis star. The disappointment was still there. The pain was still real. But it no longer felt heavy enough to crush her, because she finally understood something important. The people supporting her weren't asking her to be perfect. They were asking her to keep going. And that changed everything. The flight back to Mallorca lasted just under 2 hours. Most passengers slept. Alex couldn't. She sat beside the window watching clouds drift beneath the aircraft. The gold pendant rested against her chest. Every few minutes her fingers found it automatically, almost as if she needed reassurance that it was still there. Across the aisle, her mother noticed. "You like it?" Alex smiled. "I love it." Risa nodded. "Then don't ever take it off." Alex looked out the window again. The clouds below resembled oceans. Endless, beautiful, unpredictable. A lot like tennis. A lot like life. "Mom." "Yes. Do you ever worry that everyone expects too much from me?" Risa was quiet for several seconds. Then she answered honestly. "Every day." Alex laughed softly. "That's not very reassuring." "No," Risa admitted. "But it's true." She reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. "The expectations are enormous. The pressure is real. But do you know why people believe in you?" Alex shrugged. "Because I win matches." Risa smiled. "No." "Because I'm Filipino." "No." "Then why?" Her mother looked directly at her. "Because they trust your heart." Alex stared at her. "They trust your character. They trust your effort. They trust the person you are when nobody is watching." The words lingered. Long after the conversation ended. Long after the plane touched down in Spain. Long after the passengers collected their bags and disappeared into the terminal. Those words stayed with her. They would stay with her for years. Back at the Rafa Nadal Academy, life returned to normal. Or at least as normal as life could be for one of the most recognizable young athletes in tennis. Morning training, fitness sessions, recovery work, video analysis, strength conditioning, hours and hours on court. The routine never changed. And perhaps that was exactly what Alex needed. No cameras, no ceremonies, no speeches, just work. The same work that had carried her from Manila to Mallorca. The same work that had transformed a hopeful child into a professional athlete. The same work that would determine what happened next. One afternoon, as she finished a brutal training session, she noticed a familiar figure standing near the courts. Rafael Nadal, the Academy founder. The man whose name was attached to everything around her. The man whose posters had decorated her bedroom when she was younger. Nadal waited until practice ended. Then he approached. "How are you feeling?" he asked. Alex smiled. "Better." "Good." They stood together watching younger players practice. Nadal folded his arms. "You know, people think champions are built by victories." Alex listened carefully. "They're wrong." She turned toward him. "They are." Nadal shook his head. "No." He pointed toward the courts. "Champions are built by disappointments." Alex remained silent. "Victories give you confidence. Losses teach you who you are." The statement landed with surprising force. Because it sounded exactly like something someone who had won 22 Grand Slam titles would know. Nadal continued. "I lost many matches that hurt more than I can explain." Alex nodded. She knew his history. The injuries, the setbacks, the heartbreaks. "But every loss taught me something." He smiled. "That's why I never feared losing." Alex looked down at the clay. What if people stop believing in me? Nadal laughed. Not mockingly, genuinely. As long as you keep believing in yourself, that's enough. Then he paused. And Alex? Yes. The crowd in Paris wasn't there because you were perfect. He smiled. They were there because you were real. With that, he walked away. I'm excited to compete. Nothing more. Nothing less. Because she had learned something valuable in Paris. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every criticism deserves your energy. Not every prediction deserves your belief. The only thing that mattered was the work. And the work continued. Day after day. Hour after hour. Ball after ball. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening back home. The Alex Eala movement continued growing. Schools began organizing watch parties. Young girls started picking up tennis rackets for the first time. Local courts reported increased participation. Coaches spoke about a surge of interest. Parents who had never watched tennis suddenly knew tournament schedules. Children who had once dreamed exclusively of basketball now dreamed of Wimbledon. The impact stretched far beyond rankings, far beyond trophies, far beyond statistics. Alex had become proof. Proof that someone from the Philippines could belong on the biggest stages in sports. Proof that geography did not determine destiny. Proof that dreams were allowed to be larger than circumstances. And perhaps most importantly, proof that setbacks were survivable. Several weeks later, Alex received an envelope. No return address. No explanation. Inside was a single photograph. It showed the moment Regine Velasquez had embraced her on court Suzanne Lenglen. The crowd stood behind them. Thousands of faces blurred together. Yet the emotion remained unmistakable. Written on the back were 7 simple words. You are stronger than you realize. No signature. None was needed. Alex smiled. Then she placed the photograph beside the crayon drawing from the airport. 2 reminders. 2 moments. 2 gifts. Neither connected to tennis. Both more valuable than any trophy. Because they reminded her of something easy to forget. Results come and go. Rankings rise and fall. Victories fade. Records are broken. But impact lasts. Character lasts. Hope lasts. And somewhere in the future, perhaps years from now, another young Filipino athlete would face disappointment. Another young dreamer would wonder if they were good enough. Another competitor would question whether the journey was worth continuing. When that day arrived, maybe they would remember Alex Eala. Not because of a championship. Not because of a ranking. Not because of a trophy. But because she showed them what resilience looked like. Because she taught them that courage exists even in defeat. Because she proved that losing a match is not the same thing as losing yourself. And perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. The French Open trophy would belong to someone else. The headlines would eventually move on. The world would discover new stars, new champions, new stories. But the lesson Alex carried home from Paris would remain. Keep fighting, keep believing, keep showing up. Because every dream worth chasing demands persistence. Every meaningful journey includes setbacks. And every great story includes chapters that hurt before they inspire. The pendant around her neck said it best. Laban always. You are not alone. And as the sun set over Mallorca and another training day came to an end, Alex Eala stepped back onto the court. Not as a player defined by a first-round loss. Not as a symbol. Not as a celebrity. Just as a fighter. Ready to begin again.